Today we are breaking down one of the current topics in the Path of Exile 2 community, the lineup of classes we're actually going to get when early access drops. Path of Exile 2 promises a grand total of 12 unique classes, but it's looking like we're only getting some of them, somewhere between 6 to 8 classes max at launch. Why are they holding back, and what does this mean for the early access launch experience? Let's dive in and see what's going on with this trimmed down roster. Alright, so Path of Exile 2 is set to feature 12 different classes, each with its own distinct playstyle and skills. A huge promise for fans looking to really dig into unique builds. We've seen teasers and showcases of these classes since as far back as ExileCon, with a variety of unique identities and mechanics that expand massively on Path of Exile's gameplay. But despite this 12-class vision, early access might only be giving us 8 or 6 of those at launch. So what's the deal? Now, if you've been keeping up with PoE2's appearances at Gamescom, PAX West or the Brazil Game Show, you will know that we've mainly seen the Warrior, Ranger, Sorceress, Mercenary, Monk and Witch. That's 6 out of the 12, and notably missing are some of the fan favorites, like the Druid and Huntress. This suggests that we might be starting off with only these 6 classes for early access, but it's not entirely clear why. Now let's get into the classes that are almost certain to be available. Those 6 have each been showcased consistently in live demos at the big gaming events. Grinding Gear Games seems confident with these 6, and if you are anything like me, you are probably excited to try out these revamped archetypes. Each of them has unique gameplay mechanics, which is fantastic, but it raises the question, why hasn't GGG shown off the others? It's likely that the showcased 6 will form the backbone of Path of Exile 2's early access experience, offering a solid mix of melee, ranged, spellcasting and hybrid roles without overwhelming new players with too many options. But it's also possible they are focusing on these 6 to get more focused player feedback and start off with a balanced class set before bringing in the rest. I've got way more Path of Exile 2 content coming up. If you want to not miss out on that, make sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel. Let's talk about the missing classes that we have actually seen, starting with the Druid and Huntress. The Druid in particular has a massive following and has been highly anticipated by fans who want to experience Path of Exile 2's take on shape-shifting and elemental magic. Then there is the Huntress, which many were hoping would bring a fresh take on a ranged melee hybrid and maybe even pet mechanics. But these classes, along with several others, have been strangely absent from demos and previews. Now, this isn't necessarily a bad sign. It could simply mean that GGG is holding them back for more polish, or maybe even to release a major update post-early access launch to keep content fresh and exciting. Maybe these classes have complex game mechanics that might need a little extra refinement to feel truly satisfying to play. And let's be honest, the hype for Druid and Huntress release down the road of early access could really keep the player base engaged. Alright, let's go one level deeper here. Path of Exile 2's full campaign is supposed to have 6 acts, offering a rich storyline and loads of areas to explore. But there's been talk that early access could roll out with only 3 acts. This would be a big move, and like with the limited class lineup, GGG might be aiming to keep the content tightly focused. Rolling out half of the acts could give GGG more time to polish later acts, especially if they're packed with complex mechanics, new regions, and some of the more intense boss encounters. And hey, let's be real, 3 acts would still be a nice kickoff for PoE2. It gives players a chunk of the story, a chance to dive into character progression, and a lot of room to experiment with builds without being too overwhelming. It could even lead to a gradual build-up in difficulty, pacing us through the early and mid-game before unleashing the later acts in further updates. So why would Path of Exile 2 launch with just half of its promised classes? Well, part of it could be GGG's approach to making sure early access isn't overwhelming. With fewer classes, they can ensure tighter balance, smoother testing, and focus on refining core mechanics. It's a lot easier to manage 6 classes and get detailed feedback from players than it is with 12, especially when some of those classes might have highly unique interactions that need specific attention. Another possibility is that GGG is planning to stagger the release of these additional classes to keep content rolling in over time. Imagine 2 months into early access, a new class drops and brings fresh excitement. This kind of drip feed strategy would keep things engaging long term and might be part of a broader plan to keep players hooked beyond early access launch. If Path of Exile 2 does stagger these releases, it could mean we are in for a ton of new content over the coming months. Adding new classes post-launch gives GGG a perfect way to keep players invested and constantly shaking up the meta. Think of it as a seasonal update with entire new playstyles and abilities dropping every few months. They might even throw in a new act and a new class at the same time. For us players, that's a dream. Constant refreshes, new builds to try, and new reasons to dive back into the grind. And hey, if they're saving the Druid or Huntress for later, imagine the excitement when they finally announce those additions. We might see a full class reveal trailer, patch notes detailing new abilities, and fresh content updates that could breathe even more life into the PoE2 world. This approach could keep things feeling fresh well into the game's early access lifespan. So, Exiles, it looks like we're starting small, but don't be fooled. Path of Exile 2's early access could very well expand rapidly with more classes and updates. 8 or 6 classes is still a solid foundation, and there is a good chance we'll see the others trickle in, making each new release a reason to dive back in and try something new. What do you think of this potentially staggered approach? Do you think it would be better to release all at once, or do you like the idea of coming back to the game whenever it is being updated by GGG? Are you okay with missing out on some classes if that in return means that you get more polish and a better tuned full gaming experience? Please let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. And if you are as pumped as me for Path of Exile 2's launch, I have way more content coming up on this YouTube channel, so if you do not want to miss out on that, I suggest you subscribe, and I'll see you next time.